بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبي وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. My dear brothers and sisters in the audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. My name is Abdul Jalil Nawi. I'm here to contribute to our reflection on Juz 21 of the Holy Quran. And the first surah in Juz or part 21 start with Surah Al-Rum. The first part of my reflection on this surah is an answer to the questions of some of the people, especially our youth. They normally ask, how do I know Islam is the true religion, when there are many other religions out there which claim the same? Today, if you ask any Christian, they'll tell you, yes, Christianity is the way. You ask a Jew, will tell you, yes, Judaism is only the way. We Muslims, we also claim the same. So how do we prove that Islam is the true religion? What is our proof? Our proof comes from the Quran and from this Surah Al-Rum. How? One thing about Islam and Quran is that Quran talks about three different times. One is about the past, one is about the current, and one is about the future. Now, the past is history. People read history. People can tell you about history. And that's not so much to use that as one of the powerful reasons that Islam is the way. But one of the most powerful things to prove that Islam is the way is Quran telling us about the future, and was precise and was exact, and it happens as Quran tells about. One of these proofs is Surah Al-Rum. As you know, the ayah comes as Alif Lam Mim Ghulibat Al-Rum. Talks about the Romans, how Romans will be defeated. But not so much about the defeating the Romans, the timing that Quran mentioned. What it says, في بضع سنين. بضع سنين in Arabic language meaning less than 10 years. Which means any moment from 1 till 9 years, this incident will take place. And this was at the time where the Prophet was alive. But the incident took place after the Prophet's death. And the Prophet told us, and is mentioned, quoted in the Quran, which by the historians after the Prophet's death, which the Quran mentioned bid'a sinin, which is less than 10 years, exactly that happened in less than 10 years. And precise less than 10 years. It wasn't even 10 or more. Now, if this doesn't tell us that this Quran comes from someone who is perfect, who is God and Creator, how can he or she determine something like this and be precise and also happen exactly as it is? That is number one. Number two, in the same line also, is that when you look at this ayah, Surah Al-Rum, it tells us about nothing is permanent. All the powers that we might have, all the position that we might have, someday, somehow, either the powers leave or we leave the power. And this is something we should reflect in our daily lives. Whatever we have, whatever we post, whatever we control, a job, a position, a title, anything, This surah reminds us that, remember, if you are proud of power, there have been people who have powers, control continents, but today is all about history. But what remains is your legacy you leave behind. So anywhere you find yourself, I am the principal of a school. I am the imam of a masjid. I am the leader of this community. I am the king. I am. Whatever position you have, remember someday you will leave that position. But what remains is the legacy you leave there. And the legacy should be something positive. And that is something we learn from this surah, Surah Ar-Rum. Now, the next thing is also Surah Luqman, which is part of the Surah 21, Juz 21, which also reflect about so many things. One is how a father should deal with his child, especially a child who is not the same path of a father. Now, I know many of us have challenges in our lives, sometimes with our children, with our daughters or sons, that they're not doing what we want them to do. Now, what should I do? Should I just cut them off and curse them out and let them lose and have nothing to do with them? No, Surah Luqman tells you no. That's not the way. That's not the answer. The answer is what? Talk to them. Pray for them. These two are the most powerful things that we can use as a tool to bring our children back. It is mentioned that Luqman, as you know, Luqman, there are two opinions about him. Some scholars believe that he was a prophet sent to Africa, somewhere in Sudan, between Sudan and Egypt. And some scholars believe no, he wasn't. As a matter of fact, Luqman was presented to be prophet, but he declined. And it is mentioned that he was the only person ever been presented to be a prophet and declined. Every prophet ever been presented to become prophet, they all accepted, except Luqman. And when Jibreel came to him and asked him, his response was, do I have a choice to accept or reject? Then Jibreel says, I don't know, I have to ask God. Then Jibreel asked Allah, and the God told him, yes, you have an option, you have a choice. And he says, if I have a choice, I would not like to be a prophet. It's too much of responsibility for me. And this itself is a lesson. You know, a lot of time we fight one another to become leaders or take a positions. But one thing we always forget, the consequence of it in front of Allah. Luqman realized that and knew that, and he declined that position. Then Jibreel asked him, now that you decline being a prophet, what would you like? Now, imagine if any of us been put in this position. Ask whatever you want. You want money? Do you want knowledge? Do you want to be famous? What do you want? And Luqman said, I only want wisdom. Now, many of us will think, what a man. Why are you asking this? Why don't you ask money, power, fame, other things? That he only asks wisdom. We might belittle the knowledge or the wisdom that he asked. But do you know what Quran say about the wisdom that Luqman asked? Luqman al-Hakim, Allah tells you that he asked for wisdom. And the Surah Luqman says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةِ. Indeed, we gave Luqman the wisdom. Now the same wisdom, Allah talks about it. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةِ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Allah says in the Quran, indeed, he who is given wisdom has been given a lot. Now reflect on the word a lot, which comes from Allah. Now the same Allah in the Quran talks about the heavens and the earth and what exists in them. He says it's something little. Mal hayat dunya mata'un qalil. It's a little enjoyment. Literally, he calls it the entire this world and what exists in terms of money, power, people. Allah calls it what? Something little. And then he calls wisdom a lot. Can you imagine a lot? However, the end of the, then I don't want to take too much of your time. At the end of the, Luqman was able, with the nice word and kind words with his son, he was able to reverse him, to revert him back to Islam. And the commandment that he followed is mentioned in Surah Luqman. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all learn from these lessons of this Juz 21, not just to learn it and know it, but also to practice and put it into practice day in and day out of our life, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.